And we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our final Bashment Book Club Live of 2020. We made it. We survived the year, y'all. Like, congratulations to us for surviving 2020. We are here to discuss The Bone Readers by Jacob Ross. We've all read this book today, so it's going to be an interesting live show. So the first thing that we should probably get out of the way is, have any of us read this genre of fiction before? Because it's like detective fiction. So have any of us read this before? I'll start and say, no, I haven't. This is my first time actually reading this kind of like thrillery kind of read.
I read a Agatha Christie Poirot book once. I think it was Murder on the Orient Express like years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only detective novel I ever read. And I think I read a Sidney Sheldon book, but I really can't remember what happened in those books.
Yeah, same. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I just read a whole bunch of like FBI trying to catch a serial killer.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I was primed for this.
Yeah, like this did remind me a little bit of like Mindhunter. I do like watching TV that is crime related, but I don't like reading it for some reason. It's just like there's a juxtaposition for me. I can't read this kind of stuff. So what did you guys think of the book overall? What was your like reading experience today while we were all trying to finish it in time for this live show?
Linnell?
So what I think I enjoyed about the book was that I think the author got the cadence of the language really well, and how no one ever really answers a question without telling a story within the answer. So I think he captured that really well, but it created like a little bit of confusion, like, was that important information or could I skim over it? So I would say that there are a lot of things that still feel missing for me. But I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it enough to want to like read to the end. Whereas midway, I was like, I'm not gonna make it, y'all. But I did. And you know, yeah.
So what you said, Jed?
Okay, well, it was a mess for me. So like I read the first 20 pages like weeks ago. Because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna read this in advance and be all, so I would be reading it the day. And I was like, this is just like something about the book is just not my vibe. And I can't really put my finger on it. I don't know if it's because the book itself is just very bleak and the character, everybody is just so depressing and miserable. And like I just feel like I was not in the mood for that kind of story. I did read the last book I read before this was also a very like a book that dealt with a lot of dark things, but it was written in an almost light-hearted, humorous way. And I think right now I'm in the mood for books that have a little bit more personality and are not just bleak and drab, and that's what this book was for me. I do agree that the writing was excellent, though. I love how it was written, and I think that the author did a good job, as you said, Linnell, with like the cadence and the language and whatnot. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I listened to it on audio. I don't know if the accent was accurate because it was like a British guy who did it, but it sounded Caribbean-ish enough for me, and it is a fictional Caribbean island, so even if it's not accurate, it doesn't matter. The problem for me with this book is when I got when I started listening to the audiobook to propel me through, and I just really wasn't into the story, so I put the audiobook on like 2.5, 3 speed just to like zoom through, and I did not retain most of it. Like, and to be honest, I still don't know what happened. Like, I read the book, but I don't know who killed Nathan, and I'm still unsure about who Alice is. I keep seeing her name pop up, and I'm like, "Yo, who's Alice?" I never
They're
know.
all related.
So, and like
Yeah.
and so the part when everything was kind of all of the connections were being made, and like this one did this to this one and that one, I was just like, and yeah, so this is the first time I could say I read a book without actually reading it. It was a very interesting experience for me.
Yeah, like the writing was hit or miss for me. Like there were certain points once the like main mystery, when we figured out what the case is going to be for this book that we're going to be focusing on, which happens about halfway through the book. I really enjoyed that portion where we're unraveling like the mystery of that case. But leading up until that point, there were so many time jumps. And like the first chapter was very strange to me. The first 20 pages were sort of explaining how the main character, Michael Digerson, got his job. But it was just a very weirdly done first chapter where it's like, I was a really smart kid, but my dad didn't want to pay for me to get into school. And then I saw this person get shot and I helped them when they were dying. And then I was brought to the police station. And then I said who the person was. And then this person came to me and gave me, like, all of this happens in one chapter. And then later in the book, there's like a year gap where he goes away to school and we don't see any of that. And then he comes back. So I just thought like some of the like choices that were made plot-wise were kind of strange leading up to that main case. But the main case part was solid. It was interesting seeing like all the things that went up against the main character and like how he figured out how to get like the case solved. Yeah, it was just like a very weirdly set up first book. Like I wouldn't say no to continuing and reading another story because now I know the characters, but the setup was strange for me. But to like give a plot of this book, this guy, like I mentioned, sees a kid get murdered in front of him, shows it to the police station, identifies the witnesses, and then he ends up working for the police force. And there's a case about this boy who goes missing that haunts the person who runs the police station. And eventually that becomes the main case that we follow, where we try to figure out who killed this boy. There's a Baptist church which is involved, and we learn that there are more murders, and also that the head of the church is actually molesting young girls and getting them pregnant, and basically all the kids of the church are his kids. So that is part of the story. And then we just like follow the main character after he gets like put off of the force because he went against the justice minister, to figuring out the story. And like that's just basically the full thing. It's like a regular detective mystery.
Right. Sure.
It followed this like plot of like all the women falling in love with this man for whatever reason that I never understood. Yeah. It was just like dark.
If I say the romance was unnecessary, then you know
romance?
It was Lonnie and Desi, and then at the end, Miss Stanislaus. Like
I won't call none of that, except for whatever the woman that ends up being Tillman's daughter.
Yeah.
None of the rest of it was romance. It was just random women that showed up for a moment and that he claimed he was in love with.
Yeah, I mean, like everyone just kept falling in love with him, and he was like pick of the litter. But why? Like just focus. And tell me again, like, how do you drop the original motivation of solving your mother's case? Because why? All of these other women, because of this case that you're going to lose a job that you don't even really care about. And I mean, we find out who kills the mom, but it was so like anticlimactic, and it still didn't really answer like specifically what was she killed because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or was it to prove a point? And so romance not needed.
And I think like that's kind of why I ended up stop paying attention to the book, because that setup was so confusing and so back and forth that by the time, like, this is a book that I would have for sure 100% DNF'd. And I was like thinking to like pull another Star Side of Bird Hill, like just come to the live show. And I was like, I can't do that twice in the same year. So I was like, you know what? Let me just listen to it out. And and so like a lot of the things just kind of flew over my head. And there were certain things that pulled me back in and that caught my attention, but honestly, like a lot of the book I just did not really retain, and I'm still not, and that's why I'm happy to do this live show with y'all, because like I'm just ready for y'all to explain everything to me, because I would say definitely the last 50 pages I might as well haven't even had read it, because it's just that out of my head.
Well, the last 50 pages really tries to tie up everything, and it's done so quickly that it's easy to miss so much information.
And like I feel
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, I feel like the whole point of like these kinds of books is like, yes, there's a mystery element to it because you have to solve the mystery along with the detective or whatever, but the writing, you're supposed to make it easy enough that one, the reader can follow along and also figure it out along with the detective. This felt like he was explaining to me what everything meant because I could not keep up or understand. Like the ending was confusing because we learned like the person that we thought killed everybody didn't actually kill these people. It was this other person. And I was like, how was I supposed to figure that out? This person had like 3 lines.
No lines.
It was
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like unsatisfying in the sense like you're supposed to make it easy for the reader to figure out with you, but it wasn't that. It was just like you were telling me a story, and I was just like, okay, I guess this is
It
who
felt
did
like it felt like an episode of Scooby-Doo, right? Where like you
Yes.
have no idea what's going on, and then in the end, somehow Velma like figured everything out, and she's all like, "This happened, this happened, this happened, that happened," but like you know, you didn't really see it throughout the whole story. You didn't see the things that he was picking up on throughout the whole story. He just kind of realized it like off the page, and then comes back and tells you everything. So, and that's why for me, it didn't even feel like a mystery novel or a crime novel. Not that I'm well acquainted with the genre, because I'm not, but like I feel like I'm supposed to be getting the clues and all of the hints throughout the book. And this could be my fault because I really skimmed the book, but like I also felt like we weren't really getting enough details and clues to just rope me back into the mystery. And in the end, he was like, "Well, da 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 da," and I was like, "Okay." I'll just take your word for it.
Even in the explanation, people are like, well, how did you know? And he talks about like, oh, because this, and this. I'm like, yeah, but we were in that scene. How did you know? And I think this is probably where the author could have played up the Aubert part of what I'm assuming they reference, that he has like the calling to be able to speak with spirits, right? That's a cool premise. That is something that is culturally, like
yes, I was like we didn't read that at all. Like there was one.
Yeah, it's like way in the beginning where Chilman,
or whatever.
Yeah, he talks about, for people like you, people discard you because they think you're doing Obeah, but you are seers. You can see things and you can talk to things. And then it references again where his dad, the commissioner, talks about how Chilman is always drunk from the neck down, but he has the mind because he sees things. I'm like, where was all of this? You could have like leaned into that. And then it comes up again when he does the flashback, when he couldn't get when he was studying the cadavers in London. It wasn't until he was able to see in the dark and focus on the
I skimmed that part.
body.
Any
Do you remember
flashbacks
any
I
of this?
skimmed? No. Like there's one part I remember where they reference like the title, The Bone Readers, when he finds Alice's body and he's reading the bones. But I thought it was like a literal, like he's reading the bones because he's a forensic scientist and therefore he's reading. Like
that's what I thought too. Yeah.
No, I think he that's why him and Miss Stanislas get on so well, because they're using like deduction and whatever this calling is to see beyond what is seen. Now, I could be reading into this because I want to like this story. So there's that.
Yeah, I just thought they were like all just really smart people, and like he happened to just like pick criminals because like he didn't want them to end up in prison, like children.
Yeah, but why did he get? Is it Malon?
Yeah, I don't know why he got Malon.
Yeah,
I did not like that character at all. I have so many questions about Malon because toward the end is like he can't leave a single woman alone. Every woman has to be his woman. Like especially the part with Chilman's daughter at the end where the main character has to be like, if you breathe on her again, I'm gonna kill you, basically, which was a take. They work together. They're gonna have to be in close proximity. But yeah, I don't understand the point of his character because we're told like, oh, he fought for the protagonist when the protagonist was going to lose their job and all this stuff. But like, he was being a villain 3 seconds ago.
Right.
And we don't get any of his motivations because they never have a proper conversation with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was strange was that Digger had like if she could carry a gun, but he was walking around whipping out a belt.
The belt thing. Let's not even get into the belt thing because I just pictured him whipping it around like a whip. I was so confused by the fight scenes. I was like, I don't know how he's beating people right now with a belt, but okay.
And solving crimes or preventing
belt?
crimes. Excuse me.
Like, what happened with
Yes,
the belt?
Belts.
it's his grandmother's belt because he was getting bullied in primary school. So she gave him the belt to protect himself, and from then on, he kept it as his way, you know,
Like basically, when he didn't have a
to
gun,
beat
he would beat
people.
people up with the belt, and apparently very well.
Wow,
Yeah.
I
He
did not
stopped
read this
someone
book.
from getting
He was
cut up
like
with a
Wonder Woman
machete
with
with
like
the
the
belt.
lasso, basically with that belt.
Mhm.
It was very entertaining, except I could picture none of the fight scenes because I was just focused on the fact that he took a guy down who was holding a cutlass to a woman with a belt. It was great.
Right, the belt and the
Yes.
buckle, and it broke his bone or something.
Mhm.
I
Uh,
was like, why? How is a belt buckle able to break a bone? That don't make any sense to me. Where did grandmother get this belt?
I'm
That's a
And
way
an
to
old
say
belt,
murder.
because if he had it since he was a child, shouldn't it be like dry rotten? Because
It should be old.
and not fitting him anymore. That's what I immediately thought. I was like, how? What?
Well, it was his grandfather's belt, I think. Like, it was his grandfather's belt, and the grandmother used it to beat her pastor because he was going to throw her out of the church. Yeah. It was a whole... I cannot believe there was a belt subplot in this book, but there was a belt subplot in this book. Well, I pull up some questions that I have. So, what did you think of all the characters?
Someone is saying hey to us in the chat. Hey.
What did you think of the characters besides Digson, the main character?
So, I think we always talk about how women and the violence against women, is particularly in Caribbean literature, is used as like a plot device, and it's no different here. It happens. But what I think was the author was trying to do is have like a juxtaposition with like Pet and Miss Stanislaus and his grandmother as women who are like, I'm not going to let you take advantage of me, exploit me. But it got lost in other things, right? Because women were being tossed around and killed and raped all throughout the book. So I like the women minus Mother. She's trash. But the women, I think, peeked out in a little bit of a way to say, like, we know this is wrong. The culture needs to do better to protect us. And the police, do you remember the nurse when he dropped off Miss Stanislaus? She's like, I don't know you. Did you do this? You police people aren't protecting us. So I think like there were these tones of women trying to make sure that they were taking care of each other and making sure that they were safe, but they also were also abusers too. So yeah, but I really love Pet. I want to know more about her. I think she, minus her falling in love with Digger, because I was like, girl, go home. Don't sleep with this man. He's trash. But that, didn't happen. So good. But, like, she just feels like somebody you would know, like, if she likes you, she's going to ride for you. She's going to make sure that, you're not going to get caught by surprise. So I really, really liked her, and I wish we got a little bit more, because clearly she's capable and clearly, she knows how to work around the system. So she would be one of my favorites. And I just thought Miss Stanislaw was like, I'm going to walk up in this church, I'm going to let you baptize me, and I might shoot you. So there's that.
I also enjoyed Miss Stanislaus. I thought she was very badass, and she was probably the only character in the book that I liked. I didn't care for Digger. I didn't get the point of Lonnie. Like I just don't get the like. Would it have been different if she wasn't in the book? Like how did she contribute to the mystery in any way? I'm just like, why didn't he have like a romance from the beginning with Miss Stanislaus or somebody who was just there from the beginning, as opposed to this random extra character who makes no sense. And then he was with the other woman who was with the husband, and he was in
That's
love with
it.
her, and then she just kind of becomes irrelevant, like after a point, and it's just like, I don't know. I just felt
yeah, like you're saying, like every female character had to be in love with him in some way. Like there couldn't just be a female character who was existing on her own, doing her own thing. They all had to think Digger was attractive for some reason, and that was so frustrating to me. Especially when Lonnie part was introduced, I'm like, why are we suddenly doing this random? Like, how is this affecting the story? He just needs a love interest at this point, but.
You could have done that with Stanislaus, with Kate.
Or with Pet. Like Pet be the person that he has like on and off thing with, and then she comes and it makes it complicated. Like that would have been more interesting and compelling and less characters for us to read about.
Yes.
Like, right?
And also, like I was just gonna say that he fell in love with Lonnie
immediately.
Like and after he went and saw some dead girl in a river. And like the girl was dead, and the family was inbreeding, and the father killed her or something like that. And then he just drive. Oh, she's hot, you know.
That was the most bizarre scene because he's like, sometimes you see a dead body, and then you see a live pretty one on the government road, and you all fall in love. And I was like, what the fuck is happening?
Well, I wonder if part of her storyline was to create additional tension between him and Malan, because they were already butting heads, and what a better way to make men hate each other, put a woman in between them. But they settled it
like that with they could have done that with
Pet. Like
I'm just trying.
We're both like, this is how we would have run the story.
Yeah, I feel like Lonnie felt like a throwaway character, which it makes it icky, right? Like, because he was like, here are your things that you left at my house. I'm done. Excuse me? You know that this man has been abusing this girl from
childhood.
Yeah, like, and you just like feed into the fact that she's disposable, right? Which is part of what she was saying in the beginning. Like, I know that, there are things about me that you would not want to know. And he just like leans into that in the end. And it felt like unnecessary.
Yeah, because I feel like even though there wasn't like a lot of we didn't see violence firsthand, basically every woman in this was assaulted at some point off page previously. Like even Miss whatever Stanislaus, how do you pronounce it? Kathleen, and so I will be calling her Kathleen.
I would not have known if I didn't listen to the audiobook. Like, don't feel bad.
My last name is Stanislaus, so that's the only reason.
Oh, okay. But yeah, like even we find out when Digger goes to like the separate island where she's from that she was also assaulted, and like that's a whole backstory. So it felt like every single woman in this was assaulted as a teenager, and that was just
his grandmother,
being currently abused. Like that was frustrating, as like these characters aren't really getting, like no character was fully fleshed out, but especially the women besides Stanislaus, where it's like just fodder for the overall. But
I was abused, and this is my story.
And I think like he was trying to say something about like that level of violence on islands, because there's like a specific line towards the beginning where I think it was a white guy who like killed his wife or whatever, and somebody asked like, aren't we like the men who live on this island, showing them how we treat the women, and aren't they therefore taking advantage of the situation? So I thought like that was really interesting, and I wish that was explored more, because that would be such an interesting topic, but it was sort of like just skimmed over just to fit like the plot line of a general like detective story, which is kind of frustrating.
And that's my problem with a lot of like novels that like, especially Caribbean novels that deal with abuse. I'm not saying that like sometimes certain things just exist in a story and you don't have to explore them, and that's fine. But I feel like there's never any like, okay, so there's a lady down the street, her husband beats her, you feel sorry for the woman, you hate the husband, that's it. You don't explore like, okay, why is this? Why do these men? Why do Caribbean men? Why do Kamaho men? Right? What is facilitating this culture? Why are they doing this? Like, we don't ever explore like from an accountability perspective, why do men do these things? It's always just like, well, there's this lady named Shanti down the street, and she husband is beachy, and life is really hard, and then she died, and the husband remarried somebody else, and like we never really go there. It's just kind of talked about as if it's because it is a reality that exists, but people talk about it like some of these books just talk about it like if it's the weather, you know.
Yeah,
You
that is a
mention it
very
in
Well,
good
passing.
I think he tries to critique it with the guy with the that was holding his wife hostage, and dog air it with the machete. He talked about like being in and out of jail, and his parents left him, and there was always something off with him, and the way they dealt with him was putting him in jail but never really addressing the mental health and the abandonment. So for most of his life he had been in jail, and every time he came out he was more violent. So I think there was some attempt to discuss it, but it was like every chapter someone was being abused, someone was being killed, and even the way the opening scene happened with the little boy, like people were around, no one intervened, no one said anything, and it was like the life as it is because it happened so much. Now I think he also tried to say like it, when someone who is not one of us gets killed on the island or assaulted on the island, then there is some pressure to resolve it. And I think that is definitely a critique of the Caribbean islands where, if a tourist or someone who's not local who gets hurt, who gets killed or whatever, you don't want it to look bad on the island. So you create this like almost brouhaha to figure out who did it. And it doesn't really matter if someone actually did do it, you'll put someone in jail to resolve it. So I think he tried, but there was so much going on, so much going on.
And I feel like part of it is like it is the genre itself. It has to be like the contrivances of that genre. It's like dark, it's gritty. It's not a very happy reading experience because you're reading about these gruff men doing these like gruff men things. But because it is that, like, that's part of the genre, reading about the Caribbean like that, when there's already so many like stereotypes of what it's like to live in the Caribbean with that hyper violence and all that, it just rubbed me the wrong way because it was like, I know this is like what the genre is, this is what he has to write, but at the same time, it's not making the Caribbean look great when it already looks pretty bad in terms of what people think of it. So it was like that sort of like frustration that I was having reading it as well, was like, I would rather be reading a romance book set in the Caribbean where we get some like happy times for once instead of just like this is not the genre fiction I wanted to be reading.
I assume that genre fiction. Well, obviously, I kind of knew that crime is dark and whatnot, but I kind of had the assumption that this would be dark, but not like in a super duper serious way. I thought it would just be like somebody gets murdered, and then you kind of have to solve the mystery of what happened. But it was really intense, and I think that even the blurb on it says that it's a great literary novel. So I think it's kind of meant to be a marriage of both. I think it's meant to be it's plot wise and story wise it's crime fiction, but I think in terms of the writing and the way that the author tried to address the themes, he was going for a more literary kind of edge, if that makes sense. So I think that was kind of the problem too, because like you're marrying two very heavy, dark genres right there, and I think that's also what kind of turned me off in the beginning and why I just kind of skimmed the rest of the book, because I was just like, I'm not in the mood for this. I'm not in the frame of mind for this kind of exploration.
Like, I will not lie. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that.
I just love when the two of y'all do that.
I think there's a way that you could do crime fiction without all of the violence being on page, though, because you, as the reader, you're going in already knowing someone's gonna die, right? And it's about the main character putting the pieces together or figuring out the pieces. crime doesn't the violence doesn't have to be on page because it can be inferred by the reader, right? And so I think like, and this is like a separate conversation. This is why, crime fiction or mystery thriller isn't necessarily held to the same standard of content warnings, right? Because you go in knowing somebody's dead, right? And you go in knowing someone was like sexually assaulted. So it doesn't necessarily need to be described on page. And so I think there were times where I'm like, is this necessary? I don't think so. Could you allude to someone was murdered and let the reader fill in the blanks? Yes. I think after a while, it felt like a bit of overkill. And to your point, Paige, it just made the Caribbean islands just feel like not a safe place to live when there are people who have been there and have like loving families and,
Look, Satchel hasn't been murdered yet, so I think he, like,
hello?
you're doing well for yourself.
Exactly. None of us have been murdered yet. And like, it's just like, I don't know. I mean, well, there are these things do happen and they are part of our realities. Like, it's a part of our realities, and it's great that these books explore these things. But like, I feel like when I read this book, all I'm picturing is like an island with a bunch of depressed, miserable, poor people, and everybody keeps getting killed, and everybody keeps getting raped, and it's just sad and bleak. And I'm like, I'm sure, like, if you go to Grenada or wherever this island is based off of, it's fine. Like, I'm sure it's not that bad. But like, I guess I get that that's what the book is trying to explore. But I think, especially for somebody who's not from the region, if you read this book, you're going to think, okay, well, this is what the Caribbean is. So yeah, and I mean, I guess that every Western reader should, always keep in mind that when you're reading a book set in the third world or whatever, that you shouldn't take all of the serious and depressing dark issues being addressed as like the full definition of what this place or area is actually like, because it doesn't really reflect. I mean, I'm happy. People down here are happy, nobody's getting murdered well, I mean, people are getting murdered every 5 minutes. Like, but like, it's not as drab as like this book makes it seem, And again, I think that's what really turned me off, like the unnecessary information and subplots coupled with like the drab kind of like bleak nature of the story. Just really, I couldn't stomach it.
I think like part of it was we always I think part of it is like also with these kinds of stories, normally it's one case that you're focusing on the entire time. Like they're trying to discover this one case, but we had so many things thrown in from the sides, like here and there, that added to like there's just always something bad happening here. Like there's never literally.
Yeah. And I have attention deficit issues, so like just stay one place. Stay one place, just stick to one thing. Don't, and then there's always a tangent, and none of the characters could like answer a question straight. It's always like, well, and like Mr. Chalaman, yeah, Santa P or some like Mr. Chalaman, like who is Miss Staten? I forget her name already. Santa Claus.
We just call her Miss Santa Claus. It's very in the spirit.
I love that. Yeah. And so he was like, "Who's Miss Santa Claus to you?" And he was like,
"Say whatever."
And he was like, "Figure it out." And I was like, "Well, just fucking say that it's your child." Why do you have to be like, "Well, figure it out."
That's true.
It gave me Dumbledore, and I was not appreciating it. Like, what he name again, Chalaman? He was giving me Dumbledore vibes. Like, if Dumbledore was an old, grumpy Grenadian man, this is what he would be like.
Isn't it in the fictional Trinidad, though?
What's that?
No, Trinidad is in the story. Like, Trinidad is a real place.
Because Trinidad is in the book.
Is this supposed to be Tobago? Because
no,
it was like
because they mentioned Tobago in the book
Okay,
as
cool.
well. Because when he was going to London, he said he had to stop off in Tobago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
then
Everywhere exists, but this place, except Grenada. I feel like you're right. It's Grenada because like Barbados was
Yeah.
also mentioned, and it's like all in the same.
well,
And
the
it's-
author is Grenadian. Is Grenadian.
so that makes sense.
yeah,
Grenadian.
the author is Grenadian. I think he probably wanted to create his own country just to kind of make it, just to kind of like create, like, I don't know why Caribbean authors do this, because a lot of Caribbean authors do it, and oftentimes I question, like, what's the point? Like with Shani Mutu, she does it a lot, and so another thing that they do too is they would write the book set in a country, but they never name the country.
Mhm.
So, like, I read a book called Anna in Between that was very clearly set in Trinidad, but at no point in the story did she say that the book was set in Trinidad or that she's Trinidadian or anything like that. And it was just so strange. I'm like, why can't you just say it? So I'm not sure why Caribbean authors like do that, but I feel like this country was supposed to kind of take it as its own thing, like it's its own separate Caribbean country. But given that the author is from Grenada, obviously I think like the country that probably got the most inspiration for this um island was Grenada. But one thing I found very interesting though was the way that they talked about Trinidad, almost like if it's like America, like well I'm leaving to go to Trinidad, or like I'm heading off to Trinidad. It really kind of shows like the difference between certain Caribbean countries, because Trinidad is like one of the most, if not the most developed
Mhm.
country in the English speaking Caribbean. Maybe Barbados as well could kind of like, be on the same level as Trinidad, and maybe Jamaica to an extent too.
Mhm.
So it's like, it was just a really interesting side thing that kind of shows that there's this kind of thing where people from the smaller Caribbean islands might oftentimes have to leave to go to these other countries because there's more opportunities, more resources, and not every single Caribbean island is on the same level as like development and advance and whatnot. So I found that just to be a little interesting tidbit, and I don't really think about that often because I'm from here.
Mhm.
So I kind of have this like bias where I assume like every other Caribbean country is
It's
like
the same. Yeah.
you know.
what did you think about the commentary on he said something about coolies thinking that they're better than everybody else on the island, but look at the way they're living, which I want to say I think that's a slur, right?
Yeah, it's a
well,
slur. People still say it, like people say in Barbados, because there's like a specific, like people who drive around and like sell wares out of like their vans and stuff. That's what they call them in Barbados specifically.
it differs depending on like the country, because like it started off as a slur. Like white people used to use that as a slur towards Indians, and then like other non-Indian people, like black people, would kind of pick it up and use it as a slur. But over the years, I think Guyana, they've very much reclaimed the term. Like Indian people call themselves coolie in Guyana all the time, like nothing. And I think in a lot of the other small islands, but in Trinidad is where coolie is just like 100% you don't say it. Like it's not, we don't even reclaim it. We don't speak, we don't use it in any way, shape, or form. It is very much like I don't even hear people use the term coolie in Trinidad. It's just like you don't go there. It's almost like the N word. Like you just don't go, you don't use that. So I found that to be interesting too, because I know that there are very small Indian populations in the smaller Caribbean islands like Grenada and St. Lucia, and they tend to be like small minorities, and they often tend to be like from poor villages and stuff like that, which I think was kind of represented in the book. Whereas, like in Trinidad, we're a majority group, and in Guyana and other countries. So I found that to be really interesting. And I couldn't really relate to that because I'm not a minority like where I'm from, but like in the other Caribbean islands, that experience of being Indian or Indo-Caribbean is very different. And I wondered too if that had something to do with, because it seemed like this community had a lot of incest going on. And I don't know if that's just in the book or if the author was trying to make a comment on something that actually happens in real life. And I wondered, well, if Indians tend to be a smaller community in these kind of smaller Caribbean islands, I guess like with these small villages and people are poor and they mightn't necessarily be very educated, like maybe there's a lot more room for things like incest and stuff to happen. Um, so that kind of crossed my mind. I think that would have been a really interesting thing for him to explore a little bit more. Because I just found the dynamic of like that community and the whole incest thing to be very interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like he like also shies away from like any like he was talking briefly about how like when white people die on the island, like Linnell mentioned, there's like a huge like the minister will get involved and he'll be like, we're just like figuring this out right the fuck now. And the same thing like with how like white people shoot when they actually commit crimes as well on the island, like the way like they're given less sentences, et cetera, like that kind of stuff was briefly mentioned. But I feel like along with like everything you just said, like everything is so like it's a drop in the pan, like just mentioned to like sort of build the world a little bit. And I feel like that creating a like fake island, like a fantasy island, sort of takes away from the things that could have been explored and like given context if you had chosen like a real place where people could like explore more details and figure out for themselves like what the dynamics might actually be that the author's talking about. So I feel like creating like the fantasy version of whatever island he chose to base it on like really hindered the story in some ways, because like you could pick certain pieces like you related to based on your island and then like you had to surmise the rest because there's no real politics. Like, what does the ministry look like? All I know is there's a minister of justice. That is all I know about this fake island.
And it's a white building.
Yeah.
With bricks.
Yeah, I could not picture the island at all, other than like there's a lot of like bush and you could drive from one end to the other in an hour. That is all I know.
Yeah.
And there's wetlands or mudlands or something like that where bodies end up sometimes.
And I'm thinking too about like, okay, you know, just the way that, you know, if I was say like a Indian from a smaller Caribbean island, like say I was an Indo-Grenadian or something like that, and I read this book, I don't know how I might have felt or if that scene would have rubbed me the wrong way, because I'm thinking too, like, you know, you're mentioning this is the only time you're really talking about like Indians in Grenada, and it's like, are you kind of just stereotyping them as like poor communities where incest or whatever else kind of happens? And it's like, I know that there wasn't really room in the book to explore that, but it just kind of felt like I want to acknowledge this because this is an issue that happens, but like we just don't really get more context or more details. I don't know, I just found that to be very interesting. And it wasn't just that, it was other things throughout the book, as you said, Paige, that he would kind of mention, but he wouldn't really go there, you know?
Like same thing with like Nathan very obviously being a queer person and being murdered in part because he witnessed or knew about a murder, but also in part because like we were told like the leader of the church or whatever used to like rail on Nathan because he was like bad or whatever, like against the church. And like that was like a whole thing. I'm like, but we didn't discuss it. What? Yeah?
I have a question. Nathan was great?
He was with these Canadian men.
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You really was giving the end up. You was really
but I felt like totally stereotyping him though, right? Because he was like how he dressed and he had like, you know, he had
clippers, he used to like moisturize his hands, he cared about his look, like
I read that and it occurred to me like, okay, what if he's gay or something? But I didn't really like read into it that much because like I had kind of gotten to the point. I was hoping this book would be queer. I don't know why. I think I just was hoping it was. So by the time we got to that point, I had just kind of accepted that this is a very hetero book, you know. So, but that didn't really occur to me. And then they call him a softfoot man, and I was like, I felt attacked because I cannot walk on pitch. But that aside, I think we've gotten to the point in the live show where y'all need to tell me what happened because I know it have somebody named Alice. And she dead, and then have somebody named Pike, and he dead too, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that they found and they thought was Nathan.
Stanislaus shot him multiple times.
Stanislaus did that?
Yes.
Okay, good. You only explain to me. Okay, start from the beginning.
So the crime itself that we're exploring is what happened to Nathan, right? Nathan's gone, whatever, and then Santa Claus is called what I'm gonna call her, Kathleen. she goes and joins the church because she figures something's going on there, because she sees all the kids and she realizes all the kids look kind of similar, which is kind of strange. So she uncovers that the leader of the church has been, like I said, like molesting the kids, like the younger girls when they're like 13, 14-ish, and then they have kids. And like that's just been going on. And so Digger thinks that he killed this woman, went missing in the church. Her name's Alice. She went missing. He assumes that the pastor was the one that killed her because like of the whole plot of like him molesting other kids. He assumed she was going to leave the church, and therefore that's why she got killed. But after
Says Bella, right?
Yeah, Bella. So Bella gets killed because he tries to kill Kathleen, and so there's a whole bit where like, did Kathleen kill him because he got shot? No, he died beforehand, and we're told it's this woman. What's her name? Begins with A.
Adora.
Yeah. So we're told like, oh, Adora took a rock, hit him in his head, he died, and then Kathleen shot him to like take the blame because she's part of the police. So that's how we assume things are going to wrap up. But then we discovered that Adora's left the church because they were wrong, and they didn't actually discover who the centipede in the house is because they're blind bats in the day. And so they figure it out eventually that Pike, who was one of like the watchmen of the church, he was the brother of the preacher. So they were like half brothers. And he had claimed Alice as his own when he got out of prison when she was 12, got her pregnant. One of the kids was actually his. And that's why he still looks similar to all the other kids.
Right.
And Alice fell in love with this other guy when she went to go pick up provisions or something. Jason, I think. Yeah. And Pike finds out, kills Jason, finds out Alice is pregnant with Jason's kid, kills Alice, and then kills Nathan because Nathan figured out kills Alice.
Yes.
So then Pike
but Nathan and Alice are killed in the same place, and Jason is where Nathan's
body is. So they buried like a different body, and like they discovered like the bones aren't the right bones or whatever. And so Pike attacks Digger, and Kathleen kills him by shooting him. So that's what happened at the end of the book. You're welcome.
Thank you.
But we only get like a brief conversation about his mother being killed, which is like huge in the beginning and just kind of fizzles out.
I assume that the mother's mystery was going to be connected to the mystery in the book.
No.
No, the only thing
I realized that by the time I got halfway through that we weren't really getting much from the mother's mystery. And I just didn't even know what the mystery was halfway through the book because like there was so many different things happening. And like he found the like for example, like he found the Indian girl dead, and then he found this person dead and that person, and I'm like, why is this here? Why is this in the story? Is this the mystery? Is this connected? And it leads back to what you were saying, Linda. Like we keep getting a lot of information, and as readers, we're like, is this something that we need to pay? There was too much. We were getting too much. There was just stuff that he could have cut out that was just very distracting. And like I felt like Lonnie had something to do with it, right? Because my assumption is you're not going to create a significant aspect of the story if it doesn't tie back to the plot. So Lonnie doesn't end up happening to have anything to do with it. The other woman whose husband he was sleeping with the woman, I thought, okay, maybe her husband seems very important because he's some kind of like light-skinned rich man or something. So maybe he had something to do with it, but then that doesn't end up getting explored. And it's just like, where are we going with all this information, Mr. Ross? Because like I am confused.
I was thinking the husband was going to end up being the Minister of Justice because that would have been interesting to add that in to the plot where he knows like what this man's doing in his like spare time, but he can't say anything about it because in the moment he needs like the case to get solved. But I was wrong. She just ends up getting what like he
tries to kill her.
He tries to kill her, and she ends up in Barbados. Like that's
and then her family goes after him.
Yeah. And with Lonnie, the only reason she was there was to make tensions between Malin and Digger, which arguably could have been done. There was already tension.
They could have done it with Pet or another character, and B, there was already tension between them. They already basically hated each other. Mm-hmm. Like men are catty too, you know. I think there's this perception that women dislike each other for no reason. When no, like people dislike people for no reason. Like men dislike each other for no reason too. So you could have just find another way to build tension between them instead of just adding like Lonnie and.
And also Malin like didn't like him because Chillman like Digger more than like there was a reason for the dislike. So he didn't need to add like another situation into it as well. They just genuinely didn't like each other because they were both like different people. It was so funny. Like seeing everything not tie up.
And my thing is that this is a series, right? Like
I'm assuming it's gonna be like a detective series,
Right, and I'm like, so we could put some of these things in the other books.
I think the mom thing is gonna be a continuation. Like the mom thing, we're gonna learn more as the books go on for sure. Like it's not gonna,
So the one thing I was thinking, maybe part of the reason why these different pieces kept getting added in was this crew of detectives are going in a different direction of like how to police the island, right? And there's commentary around how people were taking up and making their own types of justice, right, throughout the book. So maybe it was a critique in terms of, yes, that used to work, but now we need to do it in an orderly manner to make sure that people who are doing wrong are actually, going through the justice system. But with the justice system is already flawed. So some of these other avenues are still needed, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like the one story that sticks out to me is the one where I can't remember what happened, but they were like, let us take him out to the ocean and deal with him ourselves. Like that is the one story that stuck in my head.
Yeah, that was the one guy, Dog Air with the machete.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. There was like a bunch of stories like that where it's like the community takes care of itself for the most part, but they're still trying to do like where the community isn't able to take care of itself, like with the church situation, because he was like the minister's friends and help them. That's when they have to come in and like serve justice, I guess. But also like that brings up the whole discussion of like the crime fiction, detective fiction, police fiction in general. Like, should we be like romanticizing the idea of like justice being served by police officers? Because there's a quote that I wrote down that I was like, oh no, this is exactly what I don't like about these, where it's like, this is the only profession in the world where heartlessness was a virtue, and basically saying like they like when they walk into a room and everybody stops talking, or like when cars stop because they deserve respect and like that kind of stuff. And I was like, this is what I don't like about like police fiction in general, because it like makes it seem like a revered sort of like profession. Like it's especially because he like got plucked up from like doing nothing basically and given this job like a savior, like it saved his life or whatever, that he was able to do this. I didn't like that narrative, but like that's just a genre itself as well that I probably have a problem with.
But then he kind of interrogates like Milan's way of serving justice is like there's a line and you keep crossing it. So what makes it different when you're doing it? So I think that, again, there's all of these critiques that weren't fully fleshed out in order to be like, this is important, this connect it back or resolve it or take a stance on it, because in some ways, he Digger, used his power to get results. Maybe not with violence, but he leveraged relationships, he leveraged, resources to get things that he wanted. So we could have a conversation about like, yes, you're not like kicking someone in or, headbutting someone, which he did headbutt someone, or pistol whipping someone, but you're still doing things that are in the very gray area of the law. And you know it, and you're still intentionally doing it. So that could have been fleshed out a little bit more, because it was like a moral decision or a value decision, and he still leaned into it. So what difference does it make?
Yeah.
And the community did not trust the police. Why not explore that?
Yeah. And you see, the thing is, before I started this book, I'm like, am I really going to be reading a pro-police book like after the year we had? Not just like what happened in the States, but like down here in Trinidad, stuff was going on too. We had protests and stuff as well. And I'm like, am I really going to read this? And then when it started off, I got a little hope, because it's like, oh, his mom was killed by police during a protest. So maybe we're going to get some kind of critique of policing. Maybe he's going to go into the police force and figure, well, maybe this is not for me, and policing is not my thing because the police system is corrupt. And I feel like as you said, Linnell, we got glimpses of that, but it was never fully fleshed out. And it did end going back to the whole like, well, the police is the main way to serve justice. It's kind of like he fed us a little bit of like anti-police stuff. Like, I know there's gonna be a bunch of anti-police Caribbean people, all the little woke people coming to read my book. So here you go. Here's a little thing for you. But like, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go the traditional crime fiction route and stop back at like, well, the police are the ones to ultimately serve justice. And I was just like, I mean, I didn't even like by the time I was at the end of the book, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was just like, when is this book going to finish?
Truly, yeah, the last chapter, when it got to like chapter, it was 49, and I thought that was the end because it sort of wrapped up. And then I saw there was another chapter. I was like, this man just won't let me go. I need this book to end. Like, I need to stop reading.
I remember when Paige finished the book, she was like, I felt like I was held captive.
I truly did. I truly was like, this book needs to end. Like, I need to read something else. Like, I need a break. Linnell, I don't think we can hear you. Like, talk.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay, there you are. Because I couldn't hear you when you were saying something before.
Yeah, well, no one corrected me when I was like, "Oh, it's less than 200 pages." No,
I didn't know how many. I didn't know how many pages it was because I had the ebook, so I never like. Yeah, I didn't know how many. I was just checking like my percentage rating today. Like, please get me to like because it was at 99%. And I'm like, okay, there's gonna be like acknowledgements and all this other stuff. Is that and it did not end until page 100. It was
the physical print too. This is the last page. The last page is the.
That never happens.
I think it's because it's a UK publisher, and sometimes it could be a bit weird. No offense to the UK.
You know what I also thought was weird because in the beginning the chapters were a little bit longer, and as the story progressed, the chapters got shorter and shorter. I'm like,
yeah, the chapter lengths were very like some were really short, and then some were like 20 pages long. And I was like, I don't have like I need the shorter chapters for my attention span because I need to feel like I'm making progress while I'm reading this.
Who picked this book?
I truly do not know. I think
it was not me.
Okay, Ardo asked a good question, which is probably why we picked this book because we were looking for something that wasn't literary. Have you read a fun or feel-good book set in the Caribbean? Because we thought this was going to be different. It turned out to be so dark and so depressing.
I think somebody suggested the book because it's genre fiction. Because everything we read for the year, with the exception of Dear Haiti Lover Lane, was literary fiction. And Dear Haiti Lover Lane might as well have just, been like young adult literary fiction in its own right. So I think that's why we picked it. And I was kind of pushing it because I had a copy and I was like, this would be a good opportunity to read it. I'm glad we did pick it because I wouldn't have finished this book at all, like 100% if we didn't.
Yes, you're correct.
I mean, I finished it down to the wire, so.
Okay.
But at least I was just gonna say, like, to anybody watching, like, no worries because 2021 will be changing things up in terms of the kind of books we read. I'll leave that to Paige to announce when we talk about the next book that we're reading.
Y'all might have to announce because my attention span is so short and my brain is so fried from reading that entire book today.
You forgot the name of the book?
The first book. I remember the second one that we're reading in April, but not the first one.
Yeah,
something with hazel eyes.
The Girl with the Hazel Eyes by Callie Browning.
Yeah, so that is the book we'll read in February because we do this every 2 months because we like to give ourselves some time to read other books in between. For obvious reasons.
But wait to the last minute to read it either way.
I mean, that is the way of book clubs in general. Like any book club I'm in, I read it the day before. And then the second book we'll be reading is a rom-com, I'm pretty sure, right? Does anybody know the name of this book either?
Sweet Hand
by N.G. Peltier.
And it's set in Trinidad, correct?
Yeah. And The Girl with the Hazel Eyes. The Girl with the Hazel Eyes is a series, as well. Because I saw book 1 when I looked at the thingy, and it's set in Barbados, right?
Yeah, it's set in Barbados. Yeah. So those are the first 2 books we're reading. Look at us like planning ahead for once. Very proud of us. I have a question for you guys though, since like it's our final live show of the year. We should end on like a good note. What was your favorite book that we read this year? I can start reading out titles because I searched us on YouTube to see what we read this year because I don't remember really, to be honest. 2020 was like weird. We read Brother this year.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Brother, Dear Haiti, Loveline.
I think Burn Hill was my favorite.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think for me, it's Serious Blooms at Night.
That was so sad.
It was so well. That was the best written book we read this year. Brother was like a close second, but I think Serious Blooms at Night just love it. Just had more for it. We had a really good discussion about that one. I feel like.
I think Linnell.
I think that one we had the best discussion. You're right.
I think you're the kind of reader who doesn't really like, because I separate the sadness and the goodness of the book. So like what I mean, like it's an objectively good novel and it's well written and it's powerful. And that's separate from how sad and depressing it is. Like, it doesn't make me feel good about life, but it's done well. And so, like, that, like, so I think that's the thing. Because, like, everybody I talk to about Serious Blooms at Night would say, like, it feels weird to say that I enjoyed the book because it's so sad and what happens in it is so horrible. How do you say you enjoy that? But I think in terms of writing and in terms of the world building and the characters and
even though the book was very hard, there was some tenderness in it, right? That I don't think we get in other books. Like when I think about Here Comes the Sun, it was just raw and gritty, at least with
Serious
I'm
Blooms
looking at it. Yes, thank you. The main characters, there was like some tender moments where, he wanted to tell her story. He wanted to give her, like tell her someone cared about her and loves her. And so I don't think we always get that. So while it was sad, there were moments of tenderness. So,
So that was definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
What about you, Paige?
No, I think you're right. Well? Yeah, Serious Blooms at Night. As soon as like you said that, I was like, yeah, that was like the best written book that I probably read this year. It was just so well written. I still think about like all of like the allegories and just like the little details that you learn mean something later on, and it probably be really good for a reread because now that you know the story and what happens, you can see all the allusions made earlier in the book, probably. Yeah.
And I want to say, like, I enjoyed Clap When You Land when we read it, but after like rethinking about it, I was like, it was just all right.
I don't think we read Clap. I think you read Clap. But I don't think I've listened to it. I have it on audiobook, but I haven't listened to it. I don't think that was our book club. We read With the Fire last year.
We had a no. What happened was our third live show was a special where you read an Equia book, and I think you and I read Clap When You Land for that and other things. And so,
I read I can't remember Juliet,
Juliet. I remember what you read.
At this point.
Yeah. Okay. So it was Brother, then it was Dear Haiti, Loveline, and then we had that one live show with Jareen, which was the best live show because that was fun.
Yeah. She tagged into something recently. Oh, let's not forget about the Caribbean award show. You're right.
You want to mention it now since you?
No. I want him to finish his list.
Okay, I have to start over.
Jareen,
Brother, Dear Haiti, Jareen. Well, that wasn't a book. And Starside
of Brit Hill.
Yeah, Serious, and this
we ended the year with the Bone Readers.
Yeah. So we had five books. I would say Serious is definitely the best, and then Brother is a close second. Starside and Dear Haiti is like a tie.
I think Starside is above Dear Haiti for me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The
writing's just a little better because like the writing's more literary, and I like literary books, but we're YA now. Right. Like that's my reading taste. So
yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I would say it's like a tie for me, and then my least favorite would definitely have to be this one.
Like those four books are like here, and then this book is like here for me. Like these books I can read, and like I was like I have to finish it, but it wasn't like I need to finish this today. It didn't have like that same feeling. But I think it's because it's the type of it's crime fiction, and I don't read crime fiction for I know it's not in my taste. So
I like it, but I just didn't like this.
Do you want to mention the awards now before we forget for another time?
Yeah. So Rebel Women Lit is running a Caribbean Readers Award, and voting ends on December 31st. So if you go to rebelwomenlit.com/awards, you can see the nominations and vote.
Look at you, so professional. The most professional we've been during this entire show.
I'm like the least professional one here. Like, let me just, because I feel like I'm always like not. Listen to me. I don't know what is wrong with me. Like with Serious Blooms at Night, I finished that book like 2 months in advance, and then we did a live show where I didn't finish the book, and then we did this live show where I finished the book but not really.
Listen, this one counts. I think my favorite moment of the past year was when you thought you had muted yourself when you muted us and you didn't. That is I still think about that. I laugh. I think that's the best moment of Bashment Book Club for 2020 was that.
I try to repress that, okay? I try to repress that in my mind every time I see that live show. I purposefully, because sometimes I like to go back to our live shows and skip through and just see the things we're saying. I don't go to that one because I know the minute I see myself
that was Starside, right?
Yeah, I think that was Starside.
Starside, yeah.
Yeah. We were talking about the very end.
And because you hadn't finished it. Yeah. I remember. I will forever remember that moment. That's
oh my God. And I didn't talk to y'all about that. Oh my God. And the father drove off into the sea with the woman. That was hilarious. I'm sorry. I laughed. I was like, well,
oh my gosh.
Naomi just kept rolling with the punches throughout that whole book.
That book was so sad. It was it was up there.
But so good.
It was good. I did enjoy it. It's true.
Yeah. I mean,
thinking back on it, I'll put it above their Haiti now.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I feel like Clap When You Land is down here.
Yeah, I didn't love that one, unfortunately. When I read it, it took me a month to read it. It's a book written in verse, and it took me a month.
I got the audiobook because I figured it might be better for audio because it's written in verse. It's probably better performed.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a TV series.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay. I think I might enjoy it as a TV series because the story was really, really good. The story was excellent. I enjoyed that, but the verse and it just didn't work for me.
Ardo gave us something. I wanted you guys to read that.
I love it. I love that you watch us. I love that there's somebody who watches us.
We do this for ourselves. We do this for an hour together.
I look forward to you guys' group chat text. I'm just like,
you mean our text?
What? My favorite moment was 1, 2, see you. I was like, what? And I was like, context. And you were like, as in, I was like, oh, I felt so old.
You could tell neither of us had read the book yesterday because you said that, and I was like, do I tell them that I just have not read this book because I decided to read a Bridgerton novel instead because I'm trash? And so that's what I did yesterday instead of reading this one, which is why
I was reading Santa Kink by mistake. I want to clarify instead of reading this. So when I was like, okay, I need to empty my mind of this. No, listen.
Santa what?
Exactly. No one warned me. Everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." It's like a Santa Claus is hot. I was like, "Okay, girl, let me see." No, ma'am. No.
Interesting.
No, ma'am.
Listen, I after the whole kissing the coronavirus thing, I was like, you know what? There's no limit with some of these authors. They will write anything.
It's true. That is very true.
From the moment I heard about dinosaur smut too, I was like, all right. You never heard of dinosaur smut? It's a thing.
Okay, good to know. I'm glad that this is where we're ending our live show is with dinosaur smut. High quality, highbrow content coming from us. Anyway,
We read wide and a variety.
it's true.
You know?
Right as a dinosaurs.
Okay, no, okay. I'm ending this live show now. Please let the people know where they can find you on the internet.
I can be found at Weekend Reader on Twitter, Instagram, and Weekend Reader blogspot.com on my blog. I want to say again, I've been getting questions about a YouTube channel. I will not have a YouTube channel. I will just appear on everyone else's who will let me in. Okay?
We'll see 2021 is on here.
I ain't done with you yet, Lynell.
Well, talk about coming to Booknet Fest first, and then
listen, that's a 2022 thing. That's not happening until 2022.
I afraid. I scared. I don't want to travel until 2022.
Especially not to the US. I'm sorry. Like
yes. Oh my god.
I was looking at flights to come to Canada because I was like, oh, I'm gonna come visit. They're not even letting us in. So there's that.
I don't blame them.
I'm landlocked.
I might take a flight to Canada, and while we're flying over the States, I'll make sure they lock the doors. Like, we're flying over America.
It's so bad. It's so bad here.
You can find me crying in a dark corner. Just kidding. You can find me on YouTube. My channel is called Books on My Social Life. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Musaho_books, MUSAHO_books.
and we'll see you guys in 2021.
Are you gonna tell people where to find you, Daddy?
We're on my YouTube channel right now. I'm assuming they know who I am because we're here.
No, I'm just saying. What about Twitter?
All of my things are this. I'm Minimal Bookie across the internet. Like I have been Minimal Bookie.
I don't want you to be left out. I don't want you to
just Google Daddy Page and you'll find
Google Daddy Page and I will be the one person to probably show up, which goes to show
let me Google Daddy Page.
No, I'm scared for you. I don't know if you want those search results.
Images. Oh, I'm seeing you. You're like the second picture. And then there's a book called Secret Baby Daddy, and then a bunch of white women. Okay.
There we go. Brand.
Okay. Yeah. No, Paige hasn't changed her handle.
No, it's just my Twitter name right now is Daddy Page because I wore a hat that says Daddy on it to a live stream on my friend's channel, and since then it's also my Among Us name. So
yeah, I heard someone call you that. I was like, whoa, what just happened? And then I got the context. I was like,
the energy I want to bring in 2021. I was
present for that live show. I was honored to be there when you were present at Daddy Page. Yes,
we love that energy. So we will see you guys in 2021 in February, reading "Girl with the Hazel Eyes." Hopefully, that's not a depressing book, but I will not hold out.
But we will get a happy one in April.
True.
For sure.
Okay, true. There's one happy book in our future. That's great.
One happy book.
This one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.